Welcome to Passionately Moderate. I'm your host, Mark Gordon. We are here doing a special podcast. We're doing our Giants and Jets preview a little bit differently this year for 2014. We have our Giants expert, Brian Loshy. B. Losh, say what's up.
What's going on? Ready to talk some football.
And our Jets expert, Big Mike, first time to the podcast. Say hello to our listeners.
How's it going?
And what we're going to do is we're going to go position group by position group, 11 different groups in all, including coach and assistant coach. We're going to talk about, we're going to let Brian and Big Mike argue over who they think has the better group in at that particular position, and then we're going to make a determination to see which team has the brighter future going into the season. All right, so first up, let's start with a position that obviously anyone listening is going to know pretty well for both teams, quarterback. We'll start with offense. I'll let Brian start off. Tell me why the Giants have a better quarterback situation than the New York Football Jets.
I mean, I think it's pretty obvious. Eli's won 2 Super Bowls. Has the pedigree. He's besides last year was a little bit of a rough year numbers wise for him and for the team, but he's proven that he can win. He can win big games, and that's really ultimately what you want. You could put up all the numbers you want and have all the statistics that you want, but you want a guy that is clutch, that can take your team down the field in the last 2 minutes. He's known for that. He's had years where he's won 6 or 7 games in the last 5-6 minutes of the fourth quarter. And that's something that you can't really teach, and I don't think that the Jets have in Geno Smith or Michael Vick. So I think that's a pretty obvious advantage when it comes to the Giants and when it comes to Eli Manning.
Big Blue, Big Mike, what do you have to say about Big Blue's quarterback situation and the Jets?
Well, there's no question that Eli has had some good years. He's won 2 Super Bowls, but if we're looking at what he's done most recently, he had a pretty bad year last year. Geno Smith was a rookie last year coming into his own. Towards the end of the season, he started picking it up. And also, he's more familiar with the system that he was involved in last year. Eli right now is going into a new system. First time it's happened to him through his whole career, where he needs to pick up a new offense. Geno Smith's now in his second year, hearing good things out of camp. And if it doesn't end up being Geno Smith, we have Michael Vick coming in, who played this system in Philadelphia, where there would be no step off if he came in.
So let me ask you a question, Big Mike. I mean, just isn't the idea that you even have to mention the backup quarterback or the second string quarterback? The old saying is if you have 2 quarterbacks, you really have none. Doesn't that, right away, just because you don't even know who the starter is, give the advantage to the Giants?
I wouldn't say that because if Michael Vick didn't get hurt last year, he would have still been the starter for the Eagles. It's not like you have a random backup where you're saying it's a competition between the two. Michael Vick is a proven player in the NFL. And even at his age, he's still a big talent where you can't dismiss his ability. So if Michael Vick was on the Giants or any other team, people would be bringing up his name just because he's Michael Vick.
Michael Vick is a proven player. You're right about that. And he's obviously a freak athletically, but he's not a proven winner. Even when he was in Atlanta in his heyday, he wasn't a winner there. He really wasn't a winner with the Eagles. They had some success and he put up some good numbers there. But it all comes down to winning the big game and being clutch when it matters. And Vic wasn't letting the world up last year when he got hurt. He had a pretty decent start, and the Eagles were fairly successful, but he wasn't lighting the world up. So I don't disagree with you. And knock on wood, as far as a backup quarterback, we might be in a little bit of trouble. Because I don't think the Giants really know who that second string quarterback is right now. It seems like it fluctuates between Nassib and Painter all the time. Right now it's Painter, but as far as a starter going into the season, Eli's the man, and I think anybody the Jets throw out there is going to come second fiddle.
So I mean, I think you can make an argument that long term you like the prospects for Geno Smith, but be as objective as I can possibly be going into the season, I think. If you're the Giants, you feel better about your quarterback situation, I think, right now than you do if you're the Jets. There's no reason to think – let's say this. If Geno Smith doesn't play better than he did last year and Eli doesn't play better than he did last year, both these teams are going to be in for a long season. But you have to think that in a big spot or in a big game that Eli's experience is going to be the difference. So going into this year, I'm going to give the edge to the Giants. So moving positions to a very interesting position here because I think there's several arguments on both sides and both teams are going to be using several players. We'll move on to running back. We'll let Big Mike start. Tell me why the Jets running backs are better than the Giants.
The reason why they will have a better backfield is due to the number of backs that they have on their team right now. the Jets legitimately have 3 starters in their backfield right now between Chris Johnson, Bilal Powell, and Chris Ivory. Either one of those guys could step in any week and be the true workhorse for the team. I think Chris Johnson's going to have a real big bounce back year this year. I think we're going to see him a little more involved in the passing game for the Jets than he was used a little more in Tennessee. Chris Ivory will still get us those big yards, and Bilal Powell can do a little bit of everything. He can catch the ball, he can run between the lines, he can run outside. Giants right now, their running back position, I actually see as a bit of a question mark. There's nobody back there that I feel they know they can give the ball to every game, every week, and feel confident about that guy. There's nobody on that team that's proven to do it besides maybe Peyton Hillis, and that was how many years ago in Kansas City.
Okay. Brian, what's your response?
I actually like the position that the Giants are in with the running game this year. I think Rashad Jennings is a back who has been very successful in spurts with different teams, with Jacksonville and Oakland, and I just think he's a running back that he's got legs. He's proven that he can step in when Run DMC would get hurt. He would step in and they wouldn't miss a beat. He would be an awesome fantasy starter, and I just think he's somebody that can definitely carry the load. I love the Andre Williams draft pick. I think he's a running back that, in the Buffalo game, even though it was the first preseason game, running hard, looks like somebody that, somebody could be that third down power back, goal line back. And I actually like Peyton Hillis too, call me crazy, but one of the problems that the Giants struggled with last year was blocking in the backfield. When the line broke down, they really didn't have a running back that could step in and fill the hole. So I think Peyton Hillis, he can catch the ball a little bit. He can block for him, play a little fullback, play a little tailback when we need him to. And I think he's going to fit in well in that backfield. And I really like him at that position.
All right. So let me ask you this, though. I mean, I look at it in a couple different ways as I break it down. If I had to pick one guy to be my guy this year, I think every one of there's question marks with every running back on both teams. But I might take Rashad Jennings as my number one guy because I do think that, especially if you look at week 9, after week 9 last year for the Raiders, when they started giving him 15 carries a game, week 9 was the first time they gave him those 15 carries. From that point forward, he was the number 11 running back in all of fantasy football. And if you prorated over the whole season, he would have been a top 5 back. So, it's hard to do that. He's done it in limited spurts, but that was with the Raiders. So even if the Giants offensive line is going to be, kind of patchwork and maybe not be great, he did it with the Raiders, and it's not like that was some great offensive line. Having said that, you have a rookie in Andre Williams, and Coughlin has never shown a willingness to play a rookie running back. And I know that I'm hearing out of camp that he's had trouble blocking and learning the blocking assignments. And if Peyton Hillis is your starting running back in the NFL, based on what I saw last year, I don't think he can win football games. So, I think Chris Ivory, when healthy, has been a stud, but that's when healthy. I think Chris Johnson has been, had years where he might have been the best running back in football. Those years may be well behind him, but in a limited role, he's still the guy who can get you a home run. And Bilal Powell, I've seen him carry games for the Jets. So when I factor all those things in, although I think you could make an argument that Jennings might be the most complete player in that group at this point in their careers, I have to give the edge to the Jets. So moving on to wide receivers. Again, a lot of changes for both teams in these areas. But I'll let Bilosh start it off. Tell me why the G-Men have a better wide receiver group.
I think the Giants have a lot of explosiveness at the wide receiver. Obviously, they lost to Hakeem Nicks, who was a disaster last year anyway. I mean, he couldn't catch a cold, and the guy was just brutal. But obviously, you love the big playability of Cruz. I think Ruben Randall could have a really big year. Odell Beckham, their first-round draft pick, I'm not, obviously, it's hard to tell at this point what he's going to be. He hasn't really participated much in training camp because he's been hurt a little bit. But everything coming out of the Giants camp, from what I'm reading and hearing in interviews, is that the guy's an amazing athlete. He's going to be a tremendous receiver. He's got great hands. And he's somebody that can really help their offense. So I think in this offense with Ben McAdoo's system, they have the receivers that they need. It's not a big play gashing down the field system like Gilbride where they're getting chunk yardages. It's a little bit of more of a short passing system, quick passing system. So I think the receivers they have fit in well with that system. And I think they're in pretty good shape. I like what they did. Jernigan is somebody that has had some success for them as well as a slot receiver or maybe even an outside receiver. And I think he could be a big help for them too on offense. And he could have a big year, just as big as any of the other receivers. So
Big Mike, tell him why he's crazy.
Why is he crazy? I don't think he's crazy. I can't tell him he's crazy.
well, thank you.
I love Victor Cruz. Victor Cruz is the man. Giants have a lot of potential at wide receiver. Most of it, besides Victor Cruz, is just potential. There was a lot of talk in the draft coming out this year that the Jets were going to go after Beckham. I'm very happy we didn't get him. I wasn't impressed with him in college. I think he benefited a lot off of a good quarterback in the college scheme, and he also had he actually had a good slot receiver and a receiver on the opposite side of the field with him. So it was really hard to gauge what he did at LSU. Eric Decker coming in for the Jets. I know a lot of people like to pinpoint the fact that he had Peyton Manning throwing him the ball, which inflated his numbers. Yeah, it helps when Peyton Manning's your quarterback. But Eric Decker also had a pretty good year when Tim Tebow was his quarterback. I believe he had 8 touchdowns the year Tim Tebow was his quarterback. Tim Tebow right now is working for ESPN broadcasting college games or at a church mission. I'm not really sure where he is right now.
Well done, sir.
So, Eric Decker will have a good year. Jeremy Curley, I love him in the slot. He is a shifty player. When he was out last year, the Jets suffered tremendously. He is a big part of their team. He is underrated overall in the NFL. I think this year, being with the offensive system for the second year now, I think he's going to surprise a lot of people.
The other guy that
Well, but real quick, for the Jets, so I agree with those two guys, but if Curley's lining up in the slot, who's your second receiver?
Stephen Hill.
Why are we not? I don't see you making
Hot
a
hands?
Stephen Hill argument.
Hot Hands is on the other
Is-
side.
Is it fair to say that he might quite possibly have the worst hands of any receiver in the NFL?
You know, don't get me wrong. I'm not big on Stephen Hill, but his drops might be a little exaggerated. I think last year, or the last 2 years, out of 100 passes thrown his way, he's dropped 5. Is that bad for a wide receiver? Yes. But he's young. The issue with Stephen Hill is that the Jets took him on a reach. They took him way too early in the draft, and he's still developing. He played at Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech only runs the ball in college. Their wide receivers are there to block and nothing else.
It didn't hurt Calvin Johnson coming out of Georgia Tech.
Calvin Johnson's Calvin Johnson. There's only one.
Right.
So-
I mean, I guess listen. The only thing is I'd say is that the drop statistic seems a little bit skewed to me too, because there are balls that he misjudges so badly on the way to him. He doesn't even have an opportunity to drop them because they don't find him.
He's learning on the fly.
Well, he's an expensive learning
Yes.
tool.
The other guy I'm really just intrigued quickly is
I think David Nelson, by the way, is going to be getting a whole lot more targets this year
Yeah.
than Stephen Hill.
and
If
Manning.
if Nelson is getting those targets, the Jets' passing game isn't going to be where it needs to be.
Really, I'm a bigger fan than him. He's from Buffalo, right? They just got him right.
Yep.
I watched a bunch of games where,
He comes down with big catches. The problem with Nelson is he's a poor man version of Eric Decker. So you are literally going to have somebody on the opposite side of the field of Decker that plays the exact same style as him, but just not as well.
Fair enough. So it sounds to me like you made an argument for the Jets valiantly, but Victor Cruz here being the biggest difference, I think. And although it is,
Manningham too.
he's not even going to make the roster.
You don't think he's gonna make?
He's not even going to make the team.
I know they're talking about that. I know he's banged up a little bit, but
I think he's just permanently lost his step. I do, and I think they gave him a chance because he's their Super Bowl hero. But they actually have a couple of real nice young kids that I like coming up on the roster. This Corey Washington kid, 6'4", having himself a huge camp, and he's going to make the team. And
Dustin Parker's a nice receiver.
yeah, and they have Trindon Holiday, who they brought in for kick return stuff. They have a lot of receivers here, and we factor in that Ruben Randall, Beckham, Cruz have to make the roster. Jernigan was getting ownership love at the end of last year, so you know that he's going to be there. There's only one other spot, and I just don't see Manningham being that guy. Even if they just had to keep 6, I don't see Manningham being that guy. But we're going to give this one to the Giants. So offensive line, I'll let Big Mike start off and tell us why the Jets have better offensive line. Guys, feel free to argue with each other. Show a little personality.
Offensive line is probably one of the strengths for the Jets. It's probably the second strongest unit on their team. When healthy, Willie Colon brings a toughness to this line that I absolutely love. Brian Winters is going to be starting for the second year this year. I like what I've seen so far in the preseason games. And then you've had your staples of the line with Mangold and Ferguson for almost a decade now, where these two guys are proven commodities on the offensive line. For the most part, everybody's returning besides the right tackle, where they're a cohesive unit, where they work well together. I see big things for the offensive line this year.
I mean, looking at the Giants, obviously they're very young on the offensive line. Snee retired, Thiel's gone. The only real returner is Will Beatty, and he's banged up. He's just getting back to the team and just getting back off the injured list. So, but I like what they did in the offseason. I like the picks that they made in the draft with Richburg, and I think they're in pretty good shape. They needed to get younger. Justin Pugh is definitely he's kind of like a franchise tackle based on his performance last year and how much the Giants like him, especially in camp this year. And I think the youth on the line, there may be moments of shakiness, but I think they're going to gel as the season goes along, as they get more comfortable with the offense and McAdoo's system. And I think I'm excited to see what this offensive line can do, just because last year's offensive line was so bad and it was so hard to watch. Teams just melt through the line. I think they're in good shape, so I'm excited.
Well, so from my perspective, the Jets have a really good offensive line. They do need Cologne to stay healthy, but Mangold's one of the best centers in the game. Ferguson is, a rock solid left tackle, and that already gives them a pretty big leg up on the Giants. You can make arguments for some of these other guys also being better than anyone the Giants have. Here's my problem with the Giants. Will Beatty had a horrible season, and he's coming off a broken leg in the last game of the season. He hasn't played at all in the preseason, but he played well, got his big contract, and then last year mailed it in. He's got to step up. I'd love to give him the benefit of the doubt on J.D. Walton, but the guy hasn't played in 2 years, and after what the Giants did with David Boss, they sold me on how he was going to be the man, and he was a total bust for 2 years and a waste of money. I can't give him the benefit of the doubt on that anymore. They didn't expect to have Brandon Mosley or John Jerry starting for them. With Snead's retirement, I think they're in trouble there. Pugh's solid. Schwartz is a very good player, but they need at least two of those other three guys, Beatty, Walton, and Mosley, to step up, or they're going to need Weston Richburg to come in and start. And by all accounts, I think that may happen, and I think he's probably the right guy for that. But I don't know how you can make an argument for them over the Jets. So I'm giving the edge to the Jets, unless you want to have a final word and try to sway me.
I could contradict, try to be that person that pokes holes in the Jets' offensive line, but I think they've proven that they are pretty solid with running backs that maybe aren't as explosive or talented. They still churn up yards, and I think the Giants do have a pretty solid core, so it's hard to argue with the Giants' youth on the line over what the Jets have. That's proven. So
we're going Jets. So 2-2 so far. We got quarterback and wide receiver for the G-men, offensive line and running back for the Jets. Let's talk about tight ends real quick. Big Mike, start us off. Why are the Jets loaded at tight end, and how are they going to be better than the Giants?
Well, right now, Jets look okay at tight end. They brought in a rookie that I believe last year broke a single season record for most catches by a tight end. It was an inflated system where you can't really judge that going into an NFL system, but Amaro definitely has the talent in the passing game. He has a little work to do as far as run blocking or even pass protection, but with the strong offensive line that the Jets have, they can kind of hide his learning curve for him. At this point, he should be a big upgrade from what we've had. He should help our passing attack, and he's got a lot of talent. He can play in the slot. He can bring a whole new dimension to our offense. He can do a lot for us this year, I think. He just needs to settle in a little bit, learn the system, get comfortable with it. That probably will take some time, but I'm expecting by midseason for him to be a big asset for the Jets.
And you expect him to be the starter midway through the season?
He should be.
You didn't even mention the current starter in Cumberland. I mean, how do you feel about him?
Cumberland's serviceable. He's nothing of a game changer. Amaro is that piece that we need to open up our passing game. What you were saying before with our wide receivers, who's going to be on the opposite side of Decker, what we lack in wide receiver, I think the Jets are banking on it coming from the tight end spot.
Okay. So speaking of serviceable, Brian, make an argument for the Giants tight end situation.
Put that one on a T right there. I think obviously the Giants are a swinging gate at this moment at the tight end, but I actually think because of Manning's fondness for the tight end, I think by the middle of the season, whoever falls into that role and takes on that role is going to become probably a pretty good option. They have a couple young guys, Larry Donnell, Adrian Robinson. Kellen Davis is a little bit more of a veteran and has a little more experience in the league. But I think it's probably going to end up being probably Larry Donnell. It seems like the best athlete out of the group of tight ends that they have. So it'll be interesting to see how it shakes out. But like I said, I think you're going to see kind of a star emerge out of this group, where one of these tight ends is going to catch 8 to 10 TDs.
A star, 8 to 10 TDs.
I think someone's going to emerge.
Somebody out there write
You're
this
saying
down.
a total of 8 touchdowns between tight ends, or one of those?
No, I think one of these guys is going to catch 8 to 10 touchdowns by the end of the season. I think once the season gets going and they fall into place and everyone gets comfortable with the system, one of these guys is going to step up and is going to become a pretty big target for Eli.
That is some.
Who do you think that'll be?
He's betting on Larry Donnell.
So should I expect you to draft him in one of our fantasy leagues?
I might. He might be my second tight end.
Dude,
he might be my second tight end.
He should be your first tight end if he's going to have 8 to 10 touchdowns. Well, that's some serious homerism right there. So with Adrian Robinson, who was supposed to be the guy to step up this year in camp, isn't even going to make the roster. Absolute disaster of a pick. Jerry Reese once called him the JPP of tight ends, and I think the only way that's I think he might be able to, but the only way that's come true is that JPP's played almost as bad as Adrian Robinson over the last year and a half with the injuries. But Larry Donnell's been okay in camp. I actually think Xavier Grimble, who is an undrafted rookie out of USC, is probably going to end up being the guy for the Giants. The Giants do have a reputation or track record of pulling tight ends out of nowhere. Kevin Boss, Bear Pashko, going all the way back to Visani Shenko. I mean, they do find tight ends out of nowhere, and they're certainly good at that. And Eli certainly shown an ability to develop the tight end, but I don't see one guy in this group that's going to get the job done. And I'm not saying the Jets are loaded at tight end, but I think if you were doing a power rankings of just tight ends in the NFL, I don't know how you could put the Giants anywhere but dead last. So
I mean, there's a lot of tight ends that have been on the Giants that put up pretty solid offensive numbers. Maybe not 8 to 10 TDs. That might have been a little ambitious, but guys that were on the team that were really pretty solid tight ends with good numbers, and then went somewhere else and did nothing.
Well, I mean,
so,
the system, that's fair, but I mean, Jermichael Finley put up good numbers when healthy in Green Bay. It's not like this system that they're running now doesn't use the tight end. I mean, certainly an athletic tight end would do well here, but I think it says a lot that they've been giving all the first team snaps really to Donnell through the first 2 preseason games. I think we'll talk about assistant coaches later, but I really think the guys running the new system for the Giants really like him. But having said that, the first time I ever saw him play was in these 2 preseason games, so I'm going to give the edge to the Jets on tight end.
Out of default, it sounds like.
Oof, that's rough.
Out of default, yeah. I mean, I don't even know how you could. There are colleges I think that have better roster tight ends than the Giants. So, and listen. We knew this going into last offseason. The Giants did absolutely nothing to address tight end.
Value the position.
I mean, well, I guess they think that Eli can just make a good player at anyone. They did bring in some people, but no one with names. And like I said, I do like the kid Grimble out of USC. I think he's going to surprise some people, but there's a reason he went undrafted. So I mean, that's really what it comes down to. So switching over to the Jets coming out of the offense, which I think most people would expect the Giants to have a better offense overall, actually win 3 of our 5 position groups on offense. Now it's easy to argue maybe that the Giants with quarterback and wide receiver, those might be the 2 most important positions, or it might have been closer in some of the other areas. But right now we have the Jets with a 3-2 lead, and we're going to the strength of the Jets in our next category. I'll let you start out, Big Mike. Talk about that Jets defensive line.
How can you not love it? You got Snacks, you got Muhammad Wilkerson, and you have Sheldon Richardson. Rookie of the year last year. Muhammad Wilkerson is probably one of the best defensive ends in the game, if not the best, just due to his versatility. He can play inside, outside. The guy does everything.
J.J. Watt's head just exploded. But anyway, go ahead.
That is true. I said one of the best.
Okay.
It's the strength of their team. You can't run the ball on Jets, which some people may say is not that big of a deal anymore with it being a pass-happy league nowadays, but when you can eliminate one one whole element of an offense, it should make everything else easier for the defense. The Jets should have Muhammad Wilkerson should have been in the Pro Bowl last year. A lot of people consider that a snub with him not being selected. I heard he's planning on using that as a big motivational tool this year. Harris, also known as Snacks, is playing for a contract this year. He had a breakout year last year.
Why didn't get selected to the Pro Bowl?
Hey, they use
Come
it.
on.
They use it. And he's also playing for a contract
He must
extension.
have got a bonus or something if he made it. They don't care about the Pro Bowl. Half of them don't play in the Pro Bowl.
The ones that care do, and he seems
Come
like one
on.
of the guys that cares.
Who?
Wilkerson.
I can tell you. So I'm personal friends with one of the people on Wilkerson's management team, and I can tell you that guy is a total professional all the way through and through, and it matters to him.
He seems like one of the true guys that cares.
He's going to be around for a long time. So I think he really
He
takes
wants
care
to
of
be a
himself.
lifetime Jet.
Oh, he's a good player.
Well, I'll tell you right now, he just bought a house for his mom in the area. I know a mortgage guy who might have done a loan for him, and he's house shopping for himself. He's planning on being in the area for a long time.
He's from Linden, I believe. So New Jersey is what he knows.
So that's where he just bought a house for his mom too. So I mean, and well, I haven't even let you talk about the Giants, but I'm in love with this Jets defensive line. And I watched this kid Sheldon Richardson play football last year, and
He's a beast.
I didn't love the pick, by the way,
Neither
for the
did I.
Jets
I was
either.
very disappointed when they picked him. I wanted an offensive player with that pick.
Man, he destroyed people last year. I mean, and starting in the preseason and in the first. I mean, it wasn't like he took any time to get used to the NFL or anything else. He was one of the most impressive players I saw play any position last year. And I'll let you make the argument for the Giants here. And I think the Giants
You just want to chalk it up as a Jets win.
Listen, I'm gonna let Brian.
Relax.
I'm gonna let lawyer B. Losh make an argument here. But here's what I'll say: is that this side of the St. Louis Rams, this is the best defensive line in the NFL, in my opinion. Change my mind.
The Jets, as far as a run-stopping defense, are fantastic. I'm excited about the Giants' defensive line, predominantly because JPP is healthy again. Obviously, he was banged up for a while last year. He only had 2 sacks, but I think Kiwi and JPP on the bookends, and then you got Patterson and Colin Jenkins clogging up the middle. I think the upgrades that the Giants made in the secondary, and I know we're going to talk about that, but I think those cover corners and the safeties are going to allow Kiwi and JPP to really do some damage and really get after the quarterback. And I think there's a lot of potential for the line to be a lot better. I think Jason Pierre-Paul is going to have a huge Pro Bowl year this year. Looking at 12, 15 sacks, I think he's going to have a monster year. And I just think he has to. And I think Kiwanuka is going to step up and be a potentially Pro Bowl player or Pro Bowl caliber player with sacks and just being that anchor for the other side of the defensive line. So,
to me, as much as I would love to say that I think the Giants are better, I think you missed the biggest point that you can make an argument for the Giants, which is depth. Their frontline guys. Kiwanuka, is coming off a bad year. I think he will step into the role and do better. He's looked good in camp and in the first couple preseason games. But, as far as the starters go, I think anyone would take the Jets over the Giants. But I will say this. I think the Jets are a little bit weak beyond that first unit. I don't think they have the rotation. Whereas on the Giants, you're looking at Robert Ayers, who just came off a huge year in Denver. Jonathan Hankins, who I think is going to second year at Ohio State. If you look at the Pro Football Focus grades on him, when he played last year, he was as dominant as any defensive tackle in football. He didn't play a ton, but when he played in there, he was huge. And then Demontre Moore, who is a guy I couldn't be any more excited about. Loved the pick coming out of Texas A&M. He's a third-round pick last year. To put it in perspective, so going into his senior year at Texas A&M, Mel Kiper had the 2 top picks in the draft projected coming out of Texas A&M. One was Luke Joeckel, and the other one was Demontre Moore. Demontre Moore had a huge statistical season to back up everything that Mel Kiper saw going into that senior year, and then had a horrible combine, interviewed poorly, ran extremely poorly, didn't show up in shape and with good strength at the combine. Everybody gets to the point where he fell in the 3rd round, but this guy's college numbers were off the charts. Sack numbers every year, double digits, absolute stud, and every chance the Giants have gotten him on the field, he's blocking punts, making sacks, making tackles. He's a guy who I think could be a real difference maker in that
Something
typical
that
Giants
out.
mold. So to me, if the Giants can make a run so that next year when we're having this conversation, because they're just going to have to pay Wilkerson too, and I'm not sure they're gonna. So next year, rather than this conversation, we say the Giants have made improvements. It's going to be because DeMontre Moore became a double-digit sack guy where you could put him on the other end with JPP, and now you're looking at an Indianapolis Colts situation where you have bookend defensive ends. And for a long time. So that's my hope. I think that would be the best argument I can make. But overall, I think we have to give this one to the Jets.
And also one thing with the depth for the Jets, the one thing that the Jets have, all of their players are versatile where they can play different positions. So if they ever wanted to change up their scheme where they wanted to go to a 4-3, you can put Wilkerson and Richardson in the inside, and you can bring your two outside linebackers with Coples and Pace with their actual true natural positions and have them play the outside edge rushers.
And they brought in Babin.
And they also brought in Babin.
It's scary. No, I mean, listen, the Jets front seven is scary. So that brings us to our next position group, which is linebacker. And to me, if you're not going to, it's hard to know where to put guys like Coples in this conversation. Is he a defensive lineman or a linebacker? Because he probably changes the conversation, from one position group to another. Same thing with Pace or, if Babin is as good a rotation guy you're going to bring in to brush the passer on passing down, so you're going to find anywhere. So I'll let Loshy start off. Tell me why the Giants have the better linebacking group.
I think the linebackers, obviously, they didn't do much in the way of free agent acquisitions or they drafted Kennard, who I think they like in camp and someone that's probably going to end up. I don't know if he's going to be the starter, but it seems like he has a good chance to start strong side linebacker. Hopefully Beeson is back. Beeson is a great run-stopping linebacker, somebody to clog up the middle. I do like Jaquan Williams and Pacinger in certain packages and situations where the other team's going to be throwing a lot, or in a 2-minute drill, because I think they're good cover linebackers, especially in a division where you got LaShawn McCoy and running backs that can really get out of the backfield and catch the ball. So Jameel McClain is another linebacker that the Giants picked up, who could be an asset for them in the middle and someone that can kind of fill the role that they've needed for the last couple years. When you think about since
they let Michael Boley go,
Boley and Antonio Pierce, since Antonio Pierce retired, they really haven't had a stud in the middle. I mean, at the end, Pierce wasn't that great anyway, but when he was in his prime, he was pretty tough. So they really haven't had that big time inside linebacker, and hopefully Beeson can be that guy. But he's another guy that banged up and he's just coming back. So it'll be interesting to see. But I do think they're pretty strong at linebacker, but they definitely need to prove that at the beginning of the season.
All right, so tell me why.
Well, Jets have a lot of versatility at linebacker. We were just talking about Coples. I think now, actually, his second year going into playing the outside linebacker, he's going to be more comfortable with the position. I think we're going to see some big things from him. Calvin Pace had a career year last year. David Harris, in my opinion, is one of the most underrated middle linebackers in the league. The guy does everything. He's a true general on the field. And from everything that I'm hearing out of camp, Davis is the most impressive player on the defensive end out of all of the linebackers right now. The guy's all over the place. He's doing really well in coverage. He's really taking in Ryan's scheme right now. The linebacker group with the Jets should actually probably be their second strongest unit this year besides their defensive line. If they working with their defensive line, those big bodies causing havoc, it's going to free up the linebackers more. Going to see good things out of Harris as usual. And I really think Coples is going to have a breakout year. He needs to prove it this year.
Nobody's as fun as Bart Scott, though. Don't you agree?
I miss Bart Scott.
You gotta miss Bart. The hood champ?
Yep.
You gotta miss the hood champ.
Who doesn't miss Bart Scott?
I'm surprised they don't have him as a coach on that staff. You think eventually
maybe he doesn't want to. That was what I was thinking too. Maybe he just doesn't want the job at this point.
I don't know.
He was always good for for a good media bite or a good quote, or he was awesome.
So here's my take on it. I think the Giants have ignored linebacker for a good deal of the last decade, and I think it did hurt them. But I actually think that with the addition of Beeson last year, that actually changed the entire Giants defense. Over the second half of the season, they were one of the best defenses in the NFL, and he's a big difference maker in there. And I think the Giants are actually as good at linebacker as they've been maybe since Antonio Pierce was there, and his second to last year when he was healthy. I like Beeson a lot. I like McLean as a guy coming out of Baltimore, played on good defenses, played with Ray Lewis there and has been a solid player. Jaquim Williams is actually extremely underrated. 6th-round draft pick, South Florida. They've drafted him as kind of a project speed guy. Immediately coming out of school, ended up being great in coverage. Was one of those guys that you could put on those athletic tight ends like an Amaro or or some of the running backs, and he can cover those guys straight up.
Haysinger's not bad there either.
Right, but Williams had been a liability in the run. But actually, once Beeson came in last year, over the last 12 games of last year, once the Giants picked up Beeson and plugged him in, Williams actually graded out above average against the run. And if he can do that, now you're talking about adding McLean in or Kennard. I know Kennard's having a huge camp, but I think it's going to be McLean's job to lose with Beeson and Williams. I think the Giants are the best linebacking core they've had. Having said that, I can't make an argument for them against the Jets. I think David Harris is one of the more underrated players in the NFL, and then Coples looks like he's primed to break out. I think there's more boom or bust with the Jets. I think with the Giants, you probably know exactly what you're getting from that linebacker core, assuming they stay healthy. But I do think that it's probably the second best position group for the Jets, and I'll give them the slight edge over the Giants. So it looks like we have Jets up 4-2 on the Giants. Let's talk about secondary now for the G-men. We'll let Brian, or is it whose turn is it to start off?
I think it's Mike.
All right, Big Mike, tell me about that Jets secondary.
Right off the bat, this is the biggest question mark for the Jets on defense. There is, even before the injuries that recently took place with Milner and McDougal, who I had a lot of hope for. I thought McDougal was going to be the guy that was going to come in a few games into the season and be the guy that was going to take over that number 2 corner spot. At least, if not being the starting corner, possibly getting into at least maybe being the starting nickel corner. Milner has a lot to prove this year, and it's definitely going to hurt the fact that now he's going to be out for the rest of the preseason, might even miss game 1. The Jets blew.
Are you worried he's a bust?
Do I think he's a bust, or am I worried he's a bust?
Go ahead.
He thinks he's the best corner in the NFL.
He thinks he's the best corner in the NFL.
He'll tell you too.
And I like that because I think for any successful athlete, you have to have that mentality where you think you are the best. Do I think he's the best? No. Milner, I wasn't high on the pick when they drafted him. He has a lot to prove. The one thing I can say that I've been hearing a lot is that Rex Ryan isn't going to be so gung-ho on playing his man scheme, which he's known for. He's not going to try to fit a ball into a square peg. He knows what he has to work with. I trust Rex Ryan. Their safety should be able to help their corners, but there is no question their corners are the biggest weakness in the team at this point. I'm expecting the Jets to possibly try to make a move with some cuts taking place where they can get a veteran corner to come in and actually help them still. Calvin Pryor, he's going to be a legitimate player in the NFL. Have we seen anything yet? Am I a little worried that our hard-hitting safety has already gotten a concussion off of a punt coverage play? Yeah, I'm a little concerned, but I trust Rex Ryan. So
Milner and Wilson are both first-round picks from the last 5 years, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean
it's alarming. It's troublesome. It's now that the Jets finally have a good front defensive end, their secondary is suspect. Where it's always been their secondary was amazing, where they weren't getting the production up front, and now that they've addressed their defensive line issues, they haven't been paying enough attention to their secondary. And unfortunately, the picks that they have taken, Kyle Wilson at this point, we can say, in my opinion, is a huge bust. Kyle Wilson has had no impact play for the Jets since they've drafted him. I can't recall ever. I don't know. I'm going to have to actually pull it up and see if he has any career interceptions. I can't recall ever seeing him make a pick.
No interceptions in 5 seasons?
I wouldn't put it past it if he has more than 2 picks. I know I'm supposed to be debating how the Jets have this amazing secondary and they're better than the Giants, but to make this realistic, the Jets have big concerns in the secondary.
So you're putting this one on the plate for me, like when we talked about the defensive line, and that was pretty much the offensive line. That was that was over before it started.
There's nothing I can say.
Before the dialogue even started.
This is it's a big issue. It's going to be a big issue. Not only are their corners an issue, the teams that the Jets are playing this year with the quarterbacks and the wide receivers that they're going against, it's alarming.
Yeah, a couple Hall of Famers in that conference that you'd be seeing in a playoff game. So
the Jets this year are going up against 4 Super Bowl winning quarterbacks within the first 6 games of the season.
And one of them's not even Eli. Tell me about the Giants secondary.
I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast that the defensive backfield was what I was most excited about, and I love the acquisitions that they made. I think Rogers Cromartie and Amuka Mara. I think Amuka Mara in his 3rd year is going to have a huge year. They asked a lot of him, right away, right out of college, and he was a first-round draft pick. But I think he's going to turn into a really, really solid cover corner. Rogers Cromartie already is that. He's proven he's floated a little bit, but he's a very solid cornerback. A guy you can kind of put on the other team's best receiver and let him go to work. And I love what they have at safety. I love Stevie Brown. He's a ball hawk. He finds the ball. He's every time he's on the field, which is the big if, but he's always making plays, getting interceptions, picking up fumbles. And Antrell Roll's Antrell Roll. Hearing what he has to say about the safeties and cornerbacks in camp, and just saying how they're coming together and gelling. And he's a guy that I love back there. He's the captain of the defense. He's a guy he's that voice that you want on your defense. He's the Ed Reed type safety type player back there that you just love. You love his energy. You love his passion. He loves New York, and I'm just really excited about the defensive backfield, especially in the division with Romo and a high-powered offense down in Philly and Foles, and what's probably going to be a much better Washington Redskin offense and throwing attack with Robert Griffin and now Jay Gruden as the head coach. I think this defensive backfield, they picked up Walter Thurman. They picked up
write this down real quick.
Zach Bowman.
Walter Thurman is going to be the most important player for the Giants this year, and their best player. A monster.
They can put him anywhere, safety, corner.
First of all, just to put this in perspective for you, he's completely shut down Victor Cruz in camp. He's been lining up on Victor Cruz in the slot all camp, and Cruz hasn't made a play in training camp all year because he's had Walter Thurman draped on him. The guy is a superhuman nickel slot cornerback, and Seattle's going to miss him. Believe me when I tell you that Seattle's going to miss him this year. He is the real deal. And the biggest thing that he does, though, is that instead of now what the Giants have been doing is going 3 safeties and having Antrell Roll come in and play that nickel corner, so you lose him over the top and making those calls on defense. Now you have Walter Thurman in there, bookended by, as you mentioned, Amuka Mara and Rogers Cromartie, who are, you could make an argument, are one of the top 2 or 3 cornerback duos in the league. And you now allow Roll to go back home to his safety position where he's most comfortable, and you let Stevie Brown fly around and make plays back there. Thurman, though, is the key because, like I said, if he's shutting down Victor Cruz the way that I'm hearing about at a Giants camp, and I've talked to a bunch of the writers and stuff that are there and seeing it every play, there's no one who's harder to cover out of that slot than Cruz in the NFL. There's probably some guys who are as good, but no one better. So I'm excited about this Giants group as well.
Yeah, it's just going to be about health and hopefully, and even the D-back they picked up from Chicago, Zach Bowman. He had an interception against the Giants last year. He's a really solid.
He's a good player.
He's a good player. He's a solid player, and I just think they're very deep back there, and I think they're going to have a pretty solid year as long as they stay healthy.
Here's another prediction though for you. Jaron Hosley, who was their 3rd round pick the year they picked up David Wilson, also out of Virginia Tech, is going to get cut. He's had a horrible camp. He's played terrible in the preseason games. He has been getting flagged all over the place. I've heard that his attitude's an issue as well. They went 1st and 3rd round 2 years ago out of Virginia Tech, and both those guys will be off the roster coming off their 2nd years. And the Giants have not drafted well, and I think that's why you've seen the Jets win a bunch of these position groups. But cornerback is the one place where it looks like they've made enough moves where it's not going to hurt them. So we'll give the G-men the secondary. Let's talk. We have 3 categories left: special teams, coach, and assistant coach. And right now we have the Jets with a 5-3 lead overall. So the Giants need to kind of win out here in order to take the title. Special teams. Talk to me about the special team coaches, Brian. Special teams players. Sorry.
I don't even know who the Giants special teams coaches are. Now special teams players, I think they got, as far as a punter, one of the best punters in the NFL. He's a great direction. Stevie Weatherford's a great directional punter. He punts for average. He's always one of the top punters in the NFL when it comes to all the statistical categories and yards per punt and net yardage. So he's solid there.
But Westfall's the special teams coach that cut Weatherford for the Jets, right? And if you, by the way, there was an interview with him about a year ago where he talked.
He's a nut.
I think it was the shake weight that really pushed him over the edge.
Dude, when he defends it, he hated. It was personal, man.
He still hates him. Whenever you catch him on the radio talking about Weatherford, he still bashes him.
He's like, anytime it's a big punt, he chokes it away. We didn't trust him in a big spot. Like he is upset about. He's upset that West
slept with his wife.
You know what it was when the Giants went to the Super Bowl? They were interviewing him about Weatherford, and man, he's still very upset about
it. The kicker. I mean, I've been hearing a lot of good things about this kid McManus, and I hear he's really giving. Josh Brown had a pretty good year last year. He's a pretty solid kicker, but I hear this kid McManus has a huge leg, and he's been showing them a lot in camp. Very consistent, very accurate.
I just don't know how. Field goals. If you're the Giants, though, and I'm hearing the same stuff. I don't know how you let Josh Brown go after the year that he had.
I don't see how you could. It just wouldn't seem fair. I think
you want to keep the other guy in the roster for kickoffs, which probably don't even matter in the NFL anymore because the balls get off from the 35-yard line. Yeah. You know, you want to give away a roster spot or something, fine. But I mean, Brown, I don't remember a single big kick that he missed last year. I mean, that's
and you can't cut Josh Brown or not keep Josh Brown and keep McManus, and then all of a sudden the games start to count and you're playing Giant Stadium where the winds are 25 miles an hour, and the kid
and goes Matt Dodge on you.
Yeah, Matt Dodge, nice. I don't think they're going to do that. I mean, they've talked about him giving him a run for his money, but it's almost going to be impossible for him. Josh Brown's going to really have to go in the tank for that kid to overtake him. And you talked about one of the acquisitions they picked up. He's a receiver, but he's really a kick returner. It's Trenton Holiday. And I remember watching him in the last couple of years on Denver. He's got a great burst. He's a dynamic kick returner. He's one of the best kick returners in the NFL. So, and that's a spot that we've also really gotten no production. The Giants have gotten nothing from in the last I don't know when
ever.
Yeah, I don't remember when they
Dominic Hickson.
So Trenton Holiday on special teams anyway is going to be a huge help.
Tell me about the Jets special teams. Why are we wrong?
Well, they have a lot of speed on special teams. You have Clyde Gates, you have Ford. They drafted the slot receiver from Oklahoma Sanders. They have Curley who could return some punts. They have a lot of playmakers that they can use. Nick Foles, his foot won plenty of games for the Jets. He's made some big clutch kicks to win games. Week 1, he won a game on his foot for the Jets. They also have a rookie in camp this year that actually nailed, I believe, a 51-yarder for him against the Colts this past weekend.
Fernie?
Yeah. I don't expect him to beat out
Folk.
It's been a strength of the Jets. The one thing that the Jets should be, the one weakness on special teams that the Jets have is punting. I haven't been impressed with what I've seen from their preseason games or what I've heard from practice, but as far as their place kicker, as far as their return men, they should be fine.
Well, I'm going to give the edge to the Giants based on Weatherford because I think he's the best proven commodity out of all this group. And like I said, Josh Brown was, I'm not saying that Folk wasn't good, but Brown was really good and solid last year. And with bringing in Quentin Demps and Trenton Holiday, the Giants finally addressed some of their issues they've had with the return game, and I expect that to be much improved as well.
They also have a Super Bowl champion long snapper too.
Zach Diassi, who made a tackle last week in the preseason game.
He made an awesome tackle.
Dude, it made me so happy. I was smiling for like 7 minutes after that. So not often a preseason tackle makes you smile like that. So let's go with assistant coach, and assistant coaches, I should say. And we'll start with Big Mike. Tell me why the Jets are the better assistant coaches.
Well, Marty has been a proven offensive coordinator throughout his career. He's done some big things. He's worked with a lot of great head coaches. I feel like he brings a lot to the Jets. Dennis Thurman, he's been with the Jets for a little while now. He's finally getting the chance, or rather, he's been the defensive coordinator. The offensive
Do
coordinator.
they have a defensive coordinator, or is it just Rex?
It's an extension of Rex.
Okay.
But that's what places so much importance on Marty due to the fact that he is, I don't want to call him a guru, but he is and has been one of the better offensive coordinators in the NFL for quite some time, and the Jets have to rely on him, I feel, so much for that offensive perspective. I don't want to say the Jets don't have a head coach, because I do feel like Rex Ryan is a very good coach, but I don't think that most offensive coordinators have as much say or as much responsibility as the offensive coordinators for the Jets do. So a lot falls on their shoulders, and he delivers. I think he's going to develop Geno Smith into a good quarterback. He runs a good system. He's going to put players in the right positions, and I think he'll make everybody strive. He'll bring out their strengths.
Every time you say Geno Smith, I cringe a little. I don't know why.
Give him some time.
You're a Geno believer.
I'm not going to go off of what I saw last year to say that he's.
So what are you going to go off of?
He needs to have a big year this year.
Okay.
I'm personally very excited to see what McAdoo is going to do and how he's going to sort of change and be an innovator for this offense. Obviously, you're grateful that you had Gilbride, and you're grateful that he was a part of helping the Giants win 2 Super Bowls. But you could tell from last year there just needed to be a change. Gilbride didn't have that new age, innovative football mind offensively to adapt to the way the league is changing, and the league is changing.
He's so predictable.
He's so predictable.
I've been saying it for 10 years. I can't believe they won 2 Super Bowls with him, because the whole time he was there, I think he's one of the worst play calling coordinators. The scheme may be fine. He may be a good designer, maybe a good guy, but he is a terrible play caller.
And they brought in somebody from Green Bay, and Green Bay, they brought in McAdoo from Green Bay, and it's going to be exciting to see the offense change and how it's going to help Eli's production and how it's going to help the offense's production as a whole. Obviously, last year was not just because of Gilbride, and there was a lot of other factors, but I think this guy's going to bring a fresh, new outlook to the offense that is going to make them pretty successful. And you have a franchise quarterback. You have weapons on offense.
Because I've been hearing a ton of people raving about McAdoo and the offense he's bringing in from Green Bay. Is he getting too much credit? Because the Giants brought him in, and Coughlin liked him, and Coughlin gets so much credit now because of the 2 Super Bowl victories, and the fact that the Giants have been, a competitive to a good team since he's been there, and he did the same thing in Jacksonville. Is he getting too much credit too soon, especially because the Giants have looked awful in their first 2 preseason games? And I know it takes a long time for an offense to gel, and it took Kansas City 10 weeks last year to gel under Andy Reid when they had a new offense, but I feel like we're giving this guy a lot of credit when this is his first offensive coordinator gig.
Oh no, definitely. I mean, it'll be interesting to see how it pans out. Again, I think the weapons are there. It's not like there's a lack of talent on the Giants offense like there is.
Where did he come from again?
Like there is on the
Green
Jets
Bay.
offense.
Aaron Rodgers can make a lot of people look good.
That's true. So they are putting them on a pretty high pedestal. And
By the way, Green Bay's offense looked pretty good a couple times without Aaron Rodgers over the last couple of years too.
That's true.
With guys that you probably don't remember their names, but they've gotten by without Rodgers on offense, in Green Bay as well.
I like McAdoo. I like that McAdoo's offense is a little bit based on changing the pace of the offense and going mixing in up tempo with normal tempo and normal play calling, and that's something that I've been saying for years that they should do because Eli's so good. Not as good as Peyton, but like Peyton in his ability to read the defenses quickly, get guys set up, get people in the right position. I just feel like that's a strength of his. I mean, when you watch him in the 2-minute offense, and he's so efficient a lot at the end of games and at the end of halves. Why not mix that in parts? I understand why you don't do it normally, but I think McAdoo's offense will do that a little bit because that's how Green Bay ran their offense.
So talk to me about Perry Fuel then, because I think he's your best argument, the best bet to win this argument.
I think Perry Fuel, he's been there a while. He's been the coach for almost as long as Coughlin's been there. Not quite as long, but
well, Spags was the defense coordinator for the first Super Bowl run.
Wasn't the issue with the Giants defense that Perry Fewell just kept it too vanilla and used the blitz?
If you want to say that there was a problem with the Giants defense, you could say that, but the problems seemed to all go away when he had a middle linebacker who could, think and call plays.
No, that's definitely true. And I think through what they did in the offseason, they have the players and the talent on defense. And I think he's someone that, I think when Coughlin goes, Perry Fewell will go. I don't think his job's in jeopardy as long as the Giants defense doesn't completely fall apart, which I don't think it's going to. And I agree with Mark. I mean, it's pretty clear that as bad as people think the Giants defense might have been, it just wasn't. They were 10th overall last year in defense for the season. So whatever numbers
after getting torched the first 2 weeks,
right? And they had some bad weeks, but Perry Fewell is a solid defensive coordinator. He knows how to scheme with the talent and the players that he has. He has speed on this defense at the edges with Keeley and JPP. So I think he's a pretty strong person to have on the staff and a pretty strong assistant coach.
Yeah, I mean, so I actually think Fewell doesn't get enough credit in general. I thought he did a great job in Buffalo. I thought he did a great job in Buffalo when he took over as head coach after they fired the head coach up there. And I think if Coughlin gets to retire as Giants head coach, in other words, not fired, not because they had a bad year, but they come off a good year, he just walks away, I think Fewell's actually the next head coach of the Giants.
As two Giant fans, though, do you think after some of the bad seasons that Coughlin's had that he's not going to have the opportunity to walk away on his own?
I think he's, as much as anyone in the NFL has security, he may have security. But I mean, outside of Bill Belichick, there's nobody in the NFL that could go 6 wins or less 2 years in a row and keep their job, and he's no different. So the Giants, they went 7-9 last year. They go 4-12 this year. He's out. I mean, you could say that he could walk out on his own terms. And if they go 8-8, you're probably right. But if they go 4-12, like anyone else, Coughlin's looking for a different job. So, and you saw what happened to Atlanta last year. I mean, it can happen to anyone.
No, and that's why you respect the Giants as a franchise. I think you want that stability in a franchise. You have
the winning teams have.
You have a franchise quarterback. You have a consistent coach, a consistent coordinators. You're not interchanging staff every year. That's not obviously what leads to success. And the Giants want to avoid doing that. Like Mark said, even obviously if they went 8-8 last year, if they go 4-12 this year, there's going to be changes. There's going to have to be. But I don't think that's going to happen with this team. I don't see it happening.
So I'm going to give – it's close, I think, on the assistant coaches, but I think Fewell gives the edge to the Giants. I just think that once the first real middle linebacker they've had since he's been there, I mean, he made Chase Blackburn look really good on that Super Bowl run, if you guys remember. So
right out of being a substitute teacher, right?
Yeah, right. So, but once they had Beeson in there, I think you saw Fewell's defense really take shape. I think Antro roll now going back to his natural position this year, you're going to see good things there too. So I give the G-men a slight edge on the assistant coaches, although I think that both teams have pretty good assistants. But that brings us to head coach. So we're all tied up. It's 5-5. It's going to be decided on head coaches.
Storming back.
Give me an argument for Coughlin.
I mean, everybody knows what the Giants have done, 2 Super Bowls. Coughlin, since he came into the NFL with Jacksonville, has been a very solid coach. He's obviously a little bit of an old codger, but I think he's adapted to the players well. Obviously, Rex is kind of a players coach, and the players love him, but I think the players, if you ask them, they all really respect Coughlin. There was problems when he first came with Strahan, and because of his sort of military style as a head coach, but once the players sort of bought in, and then Coughlin started to mold a little bit, he gained respect to the players, and that's why they've been so successful. The guy knows football. He loves football. He's probably going to be in the pine box before he comes off the football field. He's the type of guy, when he retires from the Giants or whatever, when he leaves, he'll coach high school football. He doesn't care. He just wants to coach. That's just who he is. And he's successful, and he's going to put the Giants in a position to win with his work ethic and his ability to lead. And, I love Coughlin. I hope he stays. I hope he's there until he wants to leave, because I think he deserves it. And I always feel like there's a chance for us to win as long as he's a coach. So.
Rex?
Well, I know I'm already at the disadvantage of this one because he's won Super Bowls, but Rex Ryan.
Which Brian, by the way, failed to bring up in his argument.
I know.
I said it at the beginning.
No.
We know.
We haven't. No, I don't think so.
We know, you didn't, but we know it's in the judge's mind. So, Rex Ryan, in my opinion, is an amazing coach. His players love him. I remember a few years ago when Chris Jenkins was still on the team. It was during the preseason, and he said a quote along the lines where Rex Ryan should be on the list of banned substances because he is such an enhancement to the team where he just is able to motivate his players where not only do they want to play for themselves, they want to play for him. His players love him. And the first 2 years Rex came on the Jets, and even what he did last year, the guy does it with minimum talent. The Jets don't have any playmakers. They haven't had playmakers. They got to 2 AFC championships with Mark Sanchez. The Jets have done what they've done and got where they were. They didn't win anything, but they made some big runs, and they made it interesting for fans. And it all came down to Rex because he's able to get more out of his players than I think a normal coach would. The guy's a defensive genius. He lacks a little bit on offense. I feel like that's the one thing that people can say that Rex needs to work on is the fact that he needs to be more of a head coach and focus on the whole team rather than just relying on his defensive instinct and wanting his defense to be best and overlooking his offense. But at the end of the day, I don't think you can find one player in that locker room that doesn't respect the guy, that wouldn't want to play hard for him. And the NFL does those surveys of the players that want to play for which coach in the NFL. Rex is always in the top 5 every year on that. People want to play for the guy. People know what he can do. People respect him. I remember before he came to the Jets, Ray Lewis and Ed Reed were lobbying for Baltimore to hire Rex Ryan because they respect him that much. He just has a demeanor about him where he impresses me. That's the best thing I can say. I know he hasn't won anything, and winning is the ultimate thing. But
you won a Super Bowl as defensive coordinator, right?
Not as the defensive coordinator. He was an assistant.
Assistant, okay.
Don't you think he's a little stubborn though, and like his inability to adapt and how? I mean, granted Seattle won last year, but Seattle had an efficient offense.
But Seattle also had people they could rely on offense. The Jets. Listen,
he's not a quarterback there.
He's done. Russell Wilson may not have lit up the league, but he is a good quarterback. I was actually begging for the Jets to draft him. I loved Russell Wilson in college. I thought he was going to be great in the NFL.
Well, just do me a favor, because this is how I'm going to make the decision, and we got to wrap this up because we're over an hour now. But here's what I say is, defend to me what happened last year with Tim Tebow. Because I'm a huge Rex fan, and I mean, Coughlin is...
wanted him there. In my opinion, Rex didn't want him there. And this is the problem with the Jets. Woody Johnson. Woody Johnson loves to be on the back page of the paper, wants to make headlines. I don't think Rex Ryan wanted Tim Tebow there at all. I don't think he had any intention of using him. And he didn't. When they benched Sanchez, Tim Tebow was their second-string quarterback. They didn't even play him. Rex Ryan wanted nothing to do with Tim Tebow. It was forced onto his roster.
So, but then didn't he handle it badly when he talked about it in camp? He talked about how they were going to use Tebow, putting him in the punt formations. I mean, although you can make the argument that the circus was created by Woody Johnson, did Rex do what he needs to do to diffuse that circus, or did he add to it in the beginning? And then he really, to me, lost some credibility with maybe some of his other players by not doing what he said he was going to do with Tebow.
I think 2 years ago, you make a strong point where he may have lost some of his credibility, but seeing what he did last year with what they had on their team, I know they didn't make the playoffs. I was expecting the Jets to win 4 games last year. He did something that I don't think anybody expected, where he made them a respectable team last year. Tim Tebow, if you asked Rex Ryan if Tim Tebow should have been on his team, he would have said no. I feel like it was forced on him. And if you're given this player where they're getting more media attention than anybody else on your roster, you're being asked 100 questions by midday by reporters, I don't think it's bad that they said they were going to use him for this and all punt formation or special enforcer on the punt team. They'll use him in the Wildcat because you want defenses to think about that. Regardless if he's going to use him, it's something else for other teams to think about. I think he was just forced to bat hand with Tim Tebow.
But then why not use him? If under that logic, why not use him 2 plays a game and actually make teams prepare for him instead of just after week 1, teams knowing you're not going to do that. And my other point with that is he had Mark Sanchez there for 3 full years before Tim Tebow got there. Should he have known at that point that Mark Sanchez was never going to be the guy, and then shouldn't he have given Tebow a shot?
I'm not a Tebow fan. I don't think Tebow would have done anything in the respect of.
Could he have done worse than Mark Sanchez?
Probably. Because in all honesty, Sanchez didn't have much to work with either.
So he could have run into his center's ass.
It was a guard. It was a guard.
Wasn't
Nick Mangold has a great ass.
I'm not like bad, but I just think, like he was. Don't you think he was pretty much responsible for bringing Soriano in as well?
If Rex Ryan had an average to above average quarterback, he would have won a Super Bowl.
It's hard to argue against it. I mean,
he's done a lot of nothing on offense. He's done
an outrageous statement.
So I want to give this to Rex, and here's the thing. Like I'm a big Rex Ryan fan, and really it comes on just last year. I thought that was the worst roster in the NFL last year. I bet them under 5 wins, and what they finished?
Adam at 4. They were 8-8.
They were 8-8. But I don't know how you do it with Coughlin's resume. And I would make it a push, but then I feel like that would make me a giant pussy. So by default, or by 2 Super Bowl wins, I'm going to give it to the Giants, and then I give the overall matchup to the Giants. And I guess here's what this really comes down to for me then in talking about, this is a fun exercise, but obviously it doesn't really mean anything, because whereas you can say, the Jets have better linebackers than the Giants, is the Jets' advantage at linebacker as big as the Giants' advantage at quarterback? Or in the secondary, the Giants' advantage there. So, but looking at the overall scenario, again, for the Giants, this all comes down to Eli. If Eli doesn't carry that offense of average running backs, and what I think is a mostly potential receiving core, and even though Victor Cruz has been great and they gave him the money, and obviously the Giants think he's great, this guy was undrafted out of college. He's really good, but he's not Calvin Johnson. He's not even Demaryius Thomas in terms of just an overall talent level.
Slot receiver.
He's a slot receiver, right? So, it's going to come down to Eli whether or not he's going to be able to make Ruben Randall a solid number 2 receiver, whether he's going to make Odell Beckham Jr. develop, whether he's going to make Larry Donald into a decent tight end. And I think a lot of those same things play out for the Jets. And the difference between these 2 teams and their futures this year, and why I would bet the Giants will have more wins than the Jets, really comes down to Eli Manning and my lack of faith in Geno Smith. I saw nothing from Geno Smith last year that would give me any indication that he might be for real.
Geno Smith's biggest issue is pocket presence. The guy does not have it.
So give me an example of a quarterback who lacked pocket presence earlier in their career and then turned it around and became a great quarterback. Because I would think it's the one thing that's almost impossible to develop. You either have it or you don't.
It's tough to think recently because so many good quarterbacks have just come straight in and have performed.
But even looking back, I mean, the things that you could say about, even when Eli was terrible, you could always say that, he was willing to stand in there and take a hit and, never yelled his offensive lineman, never blamed anybody, had that presence and leadership.
That's the best thing I like about Eli, especially last year.
He never complained.
And his offensive line is, in my opinion, the reason why he had such a bad year.
Of course.
So, and you would never know it. He would never say anything bad about anybody. And to what you were just saying is that the season falls on Eli. It falls on your offensive line because if they don't produce again this year, Eli's not going to produce.
And it has not looked good in the preseason so far. And, unless Will Beatty comes in there healthy and makes a major difference, I think they're going to struggle. So it would the offensive line. If the Giants' offensive line is as bad a year as they did last year, maybe the Jets do end up with a better record. I think both these teams are going to be fighting for playoff spots, somewhere between 7-9 and 10-6, somewhere in that range. I wouldn't be surprised if they both made it. I wouldn't be surprised if they both missed it. The Giants need some things to break right. I love the bringing in of Jennings. I think that's going to make a major difference for them. I think for the Jets, we got to find out who Eric Decker is. So we're gonna, because he's gonna have number one cornerbacks blanketing him.
He's got a hot wife.
And all these, he does have a hot wife, which by the way he gets to keep even if he plays poorly. So at least we think. So any final words before we say goodbye?
Good luck.
All right. Well, thank you very much for doing this, and we'll catch you guys hopefully on some future episodes. We'll wrap this up at the end of the year and go back and see who was right.
Absolutely, man. Let's get him, G-Man.
Sounds good.